One of the exercises was they had said, take a week, or maybe it was even 2 weeks, take a little notebook with you around and just almost every 5 minutes write down what you're doing. Just jot it down. Just jot down, what did you spend the last 5 or 10 minutes doing? Just compile that. And then at the end of that period, take a hard look at what it was you were doing or spending your time on. Anyone that's done an exercise like this does usually come back and they're quite surprised. They're like, I cannot believe all the things I've actually had my hands on, been distracted by, gone here, gone there. So after that exercise, for me, I was really on a mission to say, okay, I've got to get 75% of this off my plate somehow. Why am I doing this? There has to be a solution for this.
Welcome to the Builder Straight Talk podcast with your host, Michael Krisa. Get the unfiltered truth from the trenches of construction, real estate, and funding. This episode is made possible by our parent company, Sound Capital, funding built for builders.
Well, Duane, I want to thank you for being on the call today. I know our builder listeners are going to get a lot out of this conversation. And to say you've been there, done that, got the t-shirt, I think that's underselling the proposition, because not only do you have the t-shirt, you're actually the COO of the company. So it's not a t-shirt. You've got the golf shirt, probably a golf cart too. So before we get into Alair, let's rewind this, because I'd really like to know, where did this all start? Especially, when did you make the decision to get into building? And what was it that you were doing prior to that that actually catapulted you on that path?
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me. Excited for being on today and where we're going to go with the conversation. But yeah, I mean, I am can't sing, I can't dance, have been doing construction in some form or fashion all of my life. For me, it really started summer jobs. I was fortunate. I grew up on Eastern Long Island in the Hamptons, so to speak. I worked on a lot of oceanfront homes. So like from just basic summer jobs, even though I was just carrying around lumber, I was doing it for some very high-end projects. And it just fascinated me what went into it. The craft, always spending time watching each and every person, what the cabinet guys are doing, what the roofer's doing, what the plaster's doing. It fascinated me. And I kind of gained experience, really got towards my end of my high school career. Was one of those people who didn't really know what I wanted to do. I certainly had probably the grades. I'm sure I could have powered myself through it, but I just, I was sort of in love with the business, went straight into construction, became a subcontractor doing all sorts of trades, from painting to trim work to, as I said, cabinetry, framing, whatever it took. And ultimately that led to me starting my own business. I had moved from the Hamptons to Charlotte, North Carolina in 1996, met a fellow named Roger Ketchum, who was from upstate New York. He and I sort of hit it off right off the bat and just opened up a remodeling business. At the time, it was definitely bootstrapped. It was, hey, I've got some tools, you've got some tools. We both got background. This is a great market. Let's go after it. And, and saw success pretty quickly. That evolved to definitely you hear the wearing all the hats. It forces you to do that. We were a startup. We did everything ourselves. We were digging the footings. We were framing the additions. But, a few years in, you start to realize, hey, this is actually a business. Somebody's got to take a little bit more of the side of finding more sales, and then putting the deals together, and then all the stuff that it takes to run a business. So I gravitated a little bit more towards that side of the business. I'll fast forward, that was early 2000s all the way up till started to grow a really good, very successful business, great reputation. And then along came 2008. We hunkered down for sure. We got through it, but it was difficult. It was really difficult. And for us, I think probably at that, it was almost like adolescent stage of our business, it was a great opportunity to look back to say, man, what didn't work? Or what got us into this position, And that's when our mind shift changed from, I guess, more of the commodity thinking to what made us different, Because I think one thing that happened in that 2008 environment, especially the few years after, was everyone got reduced to a commodity. The builders, remodelers, they had the lower hand, no doubt. So just the idea of bidding every project that came along and inviting 5, 6 builders to look at just all of it just didn't make sense to me, And I really started gravitating to the idea of the process. How do you engage with a client, learn and understand what the needs of that client really are? And, the age-old selling, get into showing some value. I'm not just here to sell you a remodeling project or a new custom home, because I have found through the years that as soon as you go to the numbers, it's just a race to the bottom. No matter what you say from that point, there's always going to be somebody, that can beat your price. So anyway, focused more on that, just our perspective from a lot of pre-construction type services we started to offer clients in the beginning, showing tons of value to them, engaging with them, building some fantastic relationships with our clients. Got us to around 2015 or 16. Again, it built the business back up. It's doing really well. Maybe the middle-aged part of the business, to where then the question started being asking of, okay, what are we going to do with this? What's the path for us? Are we just going to keep doing this for another 20 years? Do we want to pass it on to someone else? Do we want to sell the business? We really started thinking more down the line. And that's when my mind had kind of been opened up again to, the idea of what were other professionals doing. I had always been very involved in builder groups, always have been, whether it's an ARE or NAHB and lots of other industry peer groups. But I joined a group called Vistage. I'm not sure if you've heard of them, but Vistage International is an entrepreneur group. They're worldwide. And it was one of the best things I ever did because it's generally there's chapters all around and they have, I would say, between maybe 12 to 15 members each. And it's varied. Like they'll have the group I was in, there was someone that owned an insurance business, a graphics design business. Another guy had like a very large commercial electrical business. But it was a deep peer group in that we challenged each other on how we ran our businesses. Thinking outside the box. And for me, that was a light bulb moment to really start looking at what I was doing more as a business than a builder.
Is it kind of like a mastermind group that you
It's
had
kind of like a
somebody that would?
mastermind. Yeah.
Okay, so somebody leads the group, everybody pitches what they're doing, here's where the bottlenecks are, then everybody jumps in, offers their suggestions how to break it up, and then, okay, got it.
Yep. Powerful network. They share best practices. Once a month would get together, share, like I said, deep dive on financials, sometimes bring in subject matter experts, things like that. So yeah, very, very strong peer group. But as I said, it started to get me to think outside the box. I wasn't thinking, prior to that, I was looking through the lens of almost everything I did as that subcontractor or builder mindset. It was just, oh, I'm a builder, or I'm hamstrung because I'm a builder or because I'm in this industry. And when I started thinking differently, really approaching it as a business, just lots of different opportunities seem to arise from that. And I think what people need to know when they hear that is that doesn't mean you're giving up your respect for the craft or your quality or any of that. If anything, I would say it probably gets better. But it's that moment where you realize that this has to come first here. Really treating this thing as a business is going to be the path forward for lots of other things.
Do you think the trap is that you allow yourself to be defined by what you do versus what you do is the vehicle that allows you to pursue the things that you really do want to do? So it'd be akin to being a builder is like the fuel I put into my car, but it's my car that's going to get to me to where I want to go. Is that a vacation? Is it time with my family? And I think once you can peel that back and realize one is fueling the potential for the other, that's when I think the magic really starts to happen.
It really does, And as I said, I think it also, one thing that was very apparent in a group like that was it didn't matter the size of the business. It didn't matter the type of business. When you peeled back the onion, the problems were really the same.
I guess what it is, or the problem is just to get a bit bigger because it's relative to scale. So if you've got 10 employees versus 100 employees, or you're doing 100,000 a year, you want to do 1,000,000 a year, it's what are those steps? I guess at the end of the day, what is it they say? The equation is simple, but it's not easy to implement.
No, it's not. And then that Vistage group also turned me on to EOS, the Entrepreneur Operating System. I became a big, big fan of that. And, one of the things in there they talk about is hitting the glass ceiling, hitting the ceiling. And I think that is true no matter what business you're in. And you don't just do it one time and get through it. It's a series of that. You hit a ceiling, got to figure out, you got to make some changes, you break through the ceiling, some growth, some opportunity scale, you're going to hit another one. It's just, I think it's just a constant and you have to have that mindset and be prepared that it's going to happen. How do you make the adjustments to break through it and, move on?
Well, what I'd like to do, let's dial this way back because we've kind of glanced over something really quickly, and I think it applies to what's happening today in building. Now, when so you graduate high school, you didn't go into university, you didn't study economics or management or anything like that. You already decided that this is what you wanted to do, which I find really interesting because in the Hamptons, you got your Armani sweater on and everything like that, and you've decided that you want to get your hands dirty to actually build. What was it that motivated you to do that? And I guess the other question is, did your parents support that decision as opposed to being a doctor, going to the country club, and all the other things? And I'm just making assumptions here. Call me an asshole if you want me to, but what was it that got you onto that path?
I think it was simply just the passion. I was interested in it. It's kind of what got me up in the morning. I love to do it. There was 2 things I used to love to do, especially, and this was coming in some of my first jobs. It was I would get in my truck, I would drive down to the ocean at like 5:30 in the morning, do some surf casting, and I would pull right up over the dunes and go to work on a project. And it was like, this is kind of cool. This is not bad. The more and more I was working on the project and got engaged with all the different stakeholders, from the architects to the designers, the craftsmen, the trade, it was for me. I knew that, and there wasn't anything else that was really leading me down that path, be it, college education. There was some, I thought maybe I wanted to get into computer science, probably wanted to be that park ranger like every young person wants to do at some point, but it just wasn't there. The passion to pursue it wasn't there. And I'll be honest, my brother was 10 years older than me, and I saw a lot of his friends went off to college for 4 years, came back, and ended up working on a job site because they either didn't find their path or something I didn't realize then. I think, of course, as you get older, you become a father, and, it's, you just really don't know. Most people have no idea what they want to do at that age, and of course, I've gotten more involved in the industry and workforce development. It's a big passion of mine. But when you tangibly work on something, build something, can step back and look at it, it's hard to duplicate that feeling.
That's the part I wanted to go to because right now the crisis is we don't have enough young people coming into the trades. And it is because, well, we know the reason why. It was never sold as a glamorous career. It was always the thing you did if you couldn't do anything else. And to me, that's the biggest betrayal of a future that we can pass on to children right now. And I think we got to take it right back to not high school, even before that. Let them play with blocks and show them. Like when I was in kindergarten, we had those big wooden blocks. We can make like little log cabins out of it and stuff. You have to introduce them to the tactile feel of touching things and being able to build. And when I compare a degree in lesbian dance theory coming out in debt, and it'll take me forever to pay it off living in my parents' basement, versus learning a trade. And when I'm done, I can set up my own company. And actually, as I'm learning, I'm getting paid. I think we have to make that more transparent or get that message out somewhat. So kudos to you that you're giving back in the respect that you are trying to bring that message out that this is a noble trade and you can make a wonderful career out of this. And we really have to be driving that home. I don't know how we get the message out louder or how do we amplify that message?
I don't know, but it does go all the way back to the dinner table conversations, honestly. I mean, I think I grew up in a time where it was a little challenging because it did there was a part of me that felt like immediately I had in some ways failed, like I didn't just because that was you're just supposed to do this. You talk to your guidance counselor, you work on a few things, and you go off to college. That's just what you do. So there was a while where I felt like, man, I'm just not I didn't go to college. I don't have that degree. So I carried that with me for a while. But I think once I got into having a successful business and getting engaged with a lot of other folks that had successful businesses, especially through that Vistage group, and realized that, wow, we've got people of incredible success, some of which were highly educated, some that didn't finish high school. That wasn't the common theme. It was more around the passion around what they had. And I think that we have to do a better job as a society to not make it, to your point, make it look like when you fail at everything else, you go try construction. It's not that it should be noble. It's your home. It's one of the basic necessities. It's something that people are working on. And the incredible thing that I've seen, like I said, is when we took some interns on several years back, that ultimately stayed with us and became carpenters with our business. When you put some young folks in the right setting, give them the right training, let them tangibly work on stuff, they want to come to work. You don't have to drag them there. Just more young people need to be exposed to it to see what it's about.
Is that something within the culture of Alair? Do you actually provide something like that where you bring in interns or like a mentorship program, follow a builder for a day, that kind of thing?
We do it at the local level. Each individual office, location will participate because it's a lot of it also has to do with where you are. And what I mean by that, unfortunately, everything can be regulated. And you've got certain places, certain states here in the US where because of all the insurance regulations, you can't even bring a young person onto the job site. So we have to work with folks to say, hey, is there a local, organization there or somebody? That's generally how it goes. So as a layer, we support that and we try to work with our local Alair builders to, find the avenues for that. Sometimes it's through a local HBA, or an area group. Sometimes it's through an occupational school at one of the local high schools. But yeah, it's dear to us for sure.
Yeah, that's sad when there's so many regulations in the way that it's almost prohibitive to bring your lunchbox to work, let alone bring in a student.
Yeah.
Let's jump back to your evolution as a builder. It seems like the stuff that you were doing was random in that you really didn't have a plan. As you said, we were doing everything that we can get our hands on to do. And that was probably a good thing because when '08 hit, you guys were diversified enough that you could do everything you needed to get through. Was there a point that you actually got into spec build or did you jump right into doing customs?
We started to get into customs just again, I think it was part of where we wanted to go as a business, who we were targeting. I had always been attached a little bit more to the custom side of things. And so I think that's where, again, from a passion standpoint, that's what we like to do. The people that we attracted, the really good people that came onto our team, from project managers to carpenters and all the other staff, they had that appreciation of the craft, and I think it's challenging. We all know that. A lot of times we really don't build the same thing twice. So that does present its own set of challenges, but that's where we gravitated, but we also had to say, okay, how do we, if we're going to grow this or scale this, there's got to be some structure around it, you know? And that's where I started to go on a call it a mission of sorts, to really look at what were other folks doing, what had happened in the construction industry, trying to look at examples of companies that really scaled or had success. What niches were they in? And you see that at every level. You see that in production building and spec building. You see it in customs. You see it in multifamily. But obviously, I was gravitating towards that custom side. And I was just a sponge. I was going to workshops, seminars, the International Builders Show, any opportunities that I had to just engage, get in the room to see what others were doing. I was just taking it all in. And while I was sort of in that mindset is when I got approached by Alair. Alair had come to me and said, "Hey, we are looking to expand into the Carolinas. We've seen that you've done some really great work. Look like you might align with our values. Would you be interested in learning some more?" And I guess again, because I was in the right mindset, I was like, "Sure, I'm interested in learning more." Highly skeptical right from the onset, saying, "How can something that's called a franchise in the custom remodeling and custom home building, it just doesn't even seem like it can work." I think I was more intrigued probably than anything else that I actually continued the conversation. But the more I started to talk to the folks at Alair and then get exposed to the other builders and remodelers that had joined the Alair network, I started to realize this is a really good group of people. They've got where they wanted to go, how they viewed construction, how they viewed the opportunities for what you can do with a construction business, how they admitted the challenges, and the struggles. It really resonated with me. So I joined as an Alair partner. That's what we call them, builder remodeling partner in Charlotte, North Carolina. And at the time, because I was the first partner in North Carolina, I was offered the opportunity to become an Alair regional partner, which means I then had the responsibility to basically develop the region of North Carolina. Go out there, find other builders, remodelers that might be interested in what we're doing, help them transition their business, act as almost like an ongoing business coach to them, which was really up my alley at the time, just at my point in my career that really gravitated towards that. It's funny, someone had asked me once about the opportunity, and I was like, I've built so many things for so many years that I get more excited now about building a business than I do building a custom home. Because I've seen so many challenges. I've seen people that have put 25, 30 years or more into a business, whether that's a construction business, a trade, and at the end, they don't have a whole lot. Made a good living, but maybe they just generally have to just close the doors. They can't do anything with it because it was never really set up as a saleable business. That's the part I love to focus on,
Do
So
you
that's
think is that the big catch? I don't catch. One of the big features of a franchise is that number one, the Sims systems. I can't even get that word out. I'm thinking of the Simpsons. That you're taking the guesswork out of how to connect the dots. So you've got, I keep using the example of McDonald's and the fryer, French fries. I don't have to retrain somebody to do it. Here's the manual, follow step 1, 2, 3, and you can make French fries. So anybody can do that if you follow the system. So I think there's a lot of time to be saved, money to be saved if there are systems in place. The other thing that I just heard you say is what happens at the end. I don't think many builders actually think about the end. It's a Rolodex they have, it's some tools, but they haven't grown their business to be something scalable that actually is an asset, a tangible asset they can sell. Is that part of what you're getting when you join a franchise? That whole education of we're building the future right now. So it's almost like you're deconstructing what your business can be, but we have to start where it is right now and take it to what it could be.
Yeah, I think it's, each and every one of us has their strengths and has their weaknesses. And no matter what industry you're in, especially as an owner, one of your responsibilities is to build the business. Now in construction, you'll see a lot of times that an owner maybe their strong suit is just that relationship side. They can get out there, they can sell anything. They love to be there with the people and tell the work. But man, getting back to the office or trying to figure out the financials and HR and all the other stuff, they just don't want to do that. And then we've got other folks that are really strong operators. They love the idea of being on the job site and running the jobs, but they can't really step back and do any of that vision casting, like looking forward. What's the business going to look like 3 years, 5 years from now? So it's a combination of all that, and it takes a team for sure. So I think it's being able to have the systems and processes in place so that you can, first of all, you've got to clearly define your vision. If you've got a team around you, they have to understand where you're going. Where is this business going? Why am I coming to work every day? How do you want me to get that done? So give them a little bit of structure, give them the rails to get it done. But ultimately, you're trying to design simplifying things to the point where as a business owner that you can actually step aside. You don't have to have your finger on the pulse of everything to feel like it's working. You just put the right people in place and they've got those systems and processes to follow. So I think that's the challenge for any business owner. What I have found through the franchise models, it helps you get there quicker. It puts these things in place so that you can kind of take them and run with them. A lot of times I equate it to it's using the mousetrap versus building the mousetrap.
Yeah, I find some builders actually get stuck in the mousetrap because being the type that they are, that attention to detail, they feel like they have to have their fingers on everything. So but let's use you as an example. Was there a moment in your life when you realized, wait a minute, I can't be doing all this? Like for some of the builders I've interviewed, it was near bankruptcy. Another one was a heart attack when he realized, you know what, I think I got to let go because there won't be a business if I'm dead. So was there an aha for you when you realized I can't do everything? It's time to get systems in place. I need to hire people to start filling in the bits that I either don't want to do or I can't do.
Yeah, for me, it actually came out of one of those Vistage sessions that I told you I was in. Is where one of the exercises was a deep dive on. They had said take a week, or maybe it was even 2 weeks. Take a little notebook with you around, and just like almost every 5 minutes, write down what you're doing. Just jot it down. Just jot down what did you spend the last 5 or 10 minutes doing. Just compile that, and then at the end of that period, take a hard look at what it was you were doing or spending your time on. Anyone that's done an exercise like this does usually come back and they're quite surprised. They're like, I cannot believe all the things I've actually had my hands on, been distracted by, gone here, gone there. So after that exercise, for me, I was really on a mission to say, okay, I've got to get 75% of this off my plate somehow. Why am I doing this? There has to be a solution for this, which took me down the rabbit hole of looking at all the different types of software out there. Which one's better? Platforms, payment processes, accounting programs, just all of it. I was looking at everything and trying to find all the different solutions. And at the same point, as I had told you, was approached by Alair. So one of the things that ultimately led me to make my decision with Alair was when I was starting to compare. In some ways, I looked at it and you could say, well, Alair doesn't really have anything you couldn't probably do yourself. But it was, if you were to stop for a moment and think of the daunting task of actually putting all that together, that for me was the thing. Like I wanted to accelerate. I wanted to take something that had been proven, I had seen success with, and be able to just plug that in and start using it and start to scale my business. So that's where I think the power of a franchise can come in. big time.
It's all the bells. Oh, I don't want to say bells and whistles. That sounds kind of derogatory, but it's like we talked about earlier. It's all the systems that they have in place. Like you've got a powerful software solution in the back end. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we've got a software platform that we've designed because we looked at all the solutions that were out there. And one of the things that makes Alair unique, I think, is just it's the network of people. When people join Alair, a new builder joins Alair, it's not, okay, here's the book. This is how you do it this way. Yes, we've got the rails, we've got the guidance, we've got the peer group, but we also, as a collective group of people, have realized we have just brought in another tremendous wealth of knowledge into this organization. We respect all the things that previous builders have done. And where I'm going with that is that's basically what this network of builders and remodelers in Alair is. It's all these years of how they did it, what worked, what didn't work, how can we make this a little bit better, what can be streamlined. So that's the approach we took when we designed our software to say how can we create a software that is specifically designed for how we do business as Alair. We weren't trying to build a software that catered to every possible scenario. We really wanted to say, hey, we at the end of the day, we have a fairly simple business model. We build, custom homes, we remodel custom homes, and there's certain steps you have to follow along the process. And there's things that work and there's things that don't work. So again, by designing the software around that, being efficient in it, allowed us to really land on something that's pretty unique. It's also, the ability for us to just capture tons and tons of data. Like the benchmarking we can do as a network, it's tremendous. So just the software is it's a very integral part of how we do business, but it also it integrates with everything else that we do. We don't have to worry about how does our accounting program talk to our project management program and how does that talk to our time entry system and our scheduling system. It's all been designed to kind of tackle everything we need to run a successful business.
Do you think that's the future of the trade, that it's going to be more systematized? AI is going to be involved, software, collecting data, like you said. Like, what's your prediction of where do you see things in 5 years from now?
Where I'd like to see him 5 years from now, but unfortunately, I don't think it's gonna happen that quick. But, one of the personal pet peeves of mine is just, when you look at where we are and how we still actually build homes is it's pretty archaic. It's really the same way we've been building them for 100 years. Yes, there's some technologies and things that have been brought into it, but yeah, especially when you think about a custom home, let's just take a bunch of random materials and deliver them to a job site and some random human beings will show up and we just put it all together. And now I don't want to say hope for the best. Yes, there's a plan, but there's just so many areas for things to go sideways and not be, totally dialed in. And how do you replicate? How do you scale that? Along with the workforce issues that we have in Canada, I think Canada may even be in worse shape in the US when it comes to how many homes you actually need to fill the demand. But the problem is a lot of those homes, we all know it, are at the affordable or attainable level. That's the thing that everybody out there is struggling with. How do you build something that is more affordable? And if we continue to just do it the way we've done it, we're not going to solve that problem. So automation, how do we build homes, panelization, modularization, you hear about concrete, 3D printed homes. We're going to have to, as an industry, and I'm talking from production all the way through fully blown custom, we're going to have to embrace more and more of that if we're going to advance ourselves in this industry. I think we're going to find ourselves in a world of hurt if we don't.
Yeah, I was chomping down. I was trying really hard not to bite on that carrot from a Canadian perspective, but one of the things they're proposing, especially for seniors, is shipping containers. So they have a vision of creating a village, if you will, of shipping containers because that's such a quick and easy solution. So they say. And it just brought me back to there was that movie with Will Smith with I think I Am Robot is what it was called, something along that line. And it was this dystopian world of where all the robots were packed in these shipping containers. The other thing, which is a wonderful Canadian solution, is called MAID, which is assisted suicide. So we figure we'll just get rid of our seniors by letting them elect to kill themselves. So that will solve the problem there. Yeah. So when you say
Yeah,
Canada has a bigger problem, yeah, I'll ring the bell on that one and say, yeah, we won that prize. Yeah.
yeah. But I mean, I guess my point is something will happen.
Yeah.
And I think it's the matter of, as an industry, we've got to decide, are we going to try to get out in front of that or are we going to have to be nothing but reactive? Like sort of like the Uber moment. And, like we woke up one day, wow, like you said, I guess everybody's going to live in shipping containers. I think we can do something better than that. But until we come together as an industry to start really talking about what that is, it's not going to happen, unfortunately.
So, the vision then is that manufactured homes where everything's done on a precision assembly line, here it is ready to go and then shipped to the site. Is that a possible solution?
I think again, depending on are you talking entry level production or custom, but I think more I can see panelization, modularization working across all verticals because even in the custom world, you could have wall assemblies made, that are just through the roof from quality, tolerances, energy efficiency. And I think where we're going with technology, the ability to just about customize anything you want, those types of things, versus the sticks and bricks just show up at the job site and we try, the hands-on labor tries to put that together. I think it's going to be things like that. The efficiencies that go into what a lumber company can do with a log. They can stick a log in a machine and it can tell them exactly how many 2x4s, 2x8s, this, that, it dials it down. We need to get to that level with how we're going to build a home, you know, to be able to just be as efficient as we possibly can with all materials. It's gonna take a combination of not just when I say our industry, I think it's everybody. It's gonna have to come from the realtors, the designers, the architects. Everybody's gonna have to kinda get on board with the opportunity that could be ahead of us, 'cause I don't think anybody's gonna wanna move to the cube world. That's not gonna be the big desire, but I think about it like like vehicles nowadays. You can get just about any vehicle you want with bells and whistles, and you can spend as as little or as much as you want to. Why is it when it comes to a custom home, we feel like it's just has to be I keep going back to the way it's always been done. And that's something we focus on a lot here is that trying to make the experience better, trying to streamline all the things that have to go into building or remodeling a home. How can we make all of that better? So that's what we focus a lot of time and energy on, and we believe capturing data, looking back at past projects, what they've done, being able to communicate a really high level with all the stakeholders, market partners, designers, architects. All of that streamlines because I don't know anyone, no matter what part of the industry you're in, that is not going to be challenged by cost, you know?
Costs and labor would be the big one, being able to find the trades to do it. Yeah, yeah. What's your take on the 3D printed homes? Do you see that as a viable option too?
I think we're a ways from it, but I do think there's a viable option. I was just talking to someone here recently in Asheville, North Carolina that is doing some 3D. There's a combination. Some of them are doing some 3D printed homes, and then others are doing their concrete precast. In other words, the walls, the roofs. But when that goes together and the finishes go on, you can't tell it's any different than the house next to it.
That would be Kyle Bobbitt, would it, that you were talking to?
No, it wasn't.
There's a guy you got to reach out to, Bobbitt Homestead. He's trying. He's really trying hard to bring 3D printed into Carolina. And he says it's governance that's in the way. It's like we talked about earlier. This is the way it's always been done, and we don't want to mess with it. And the battle is not on the technology or implementation of the technology. It's getting the powers to be that recognize there are different ways of doing things. Let us try. Like it's working in other states. At least give us a shot to do this. It's like pushing something uphill.
We all know AI is going to have a big role in this to some degree. I will say though, I have found now is that it has to be a very dialed in approach. Whatever you're trying to use AI for has to be very, I think, narrow focused, done well. It's a garbage in, garbage out thing. If the data is not there to support it, well, we know what comes out of the other end is sometimes it's the right answer and sometimes it's not.
Yeah, I saw this one app that you could literally on a cocktail napkin draw out your little floor plan and then say that you want to build in Asheville, Carolina. And the app will scan your little thing and then it will try to render as closely as possible something similar. And it's drawing from a database of about 400,000 homes. So it can actually tell you, okay, Duane, you wanted to do this 2-story, 2,500 square feet. Here are 3 variations of that. And here's how we can save money. Now, you said Asheville, Carolina. All right, well, here's the regulations that you have to look into when you're looking to build something over a certain height. And it spits out everything that you can possibly run into.
Yeah.
And that's on one little simple app that you can have on your phone, which I thought was holy jumping. That's just incredible. And that's, I think, the future of where we're going right now.
It certainly is, and from purchasing to procurement to all the different things that can go into, that go into a home, we all know that. But that too is back to my point of we have to be very collaborative in nature
Yep.
with this. If myself as a builder are going to try to take on something, I need to make sure that everyone else, interior designer, architect, are on board and at least going to benefit from a platform that I may be deciding to use.
Now, you mentioned you got into coaching and you're actually working with builders right now. What do you tell them when they're making or they're thinking about making that transition from doing renos and everything that you did, and they want to start going off on their own to do custom?
Yeah, I think it's, for me, again, I try to dial it back and maybe it's the EOS that I've really embraced, but, and there's other methodologies out there, but you've got to really lay out that clear vision. What do you ultimately want? This is back to my point that I said earlier is I think when you shift to that mindset that this is a business, you're not just deciding that I'm going to go from being a remodeler to all of a sudden next year I want to start building homes. So am I going from a remodeler to becoming a custom home builder? I would challenge that to say you're changing something within your business. So from a business, look at this more through the lens of a business decision. Why are you doing this? What is this leading you to? What are all the things that you need to be considering? Pros, cons, a different, you move from remodeling to building custom homes. There's a good chance it's a different, in some cases, different skill set, different set of trades. There's probably, again, to the partners that we talk about, architects, designers may not do the same. Pricing, labor availability, all those things have to be taken into place. But as I said, I would dial it back to why are you doing it? Are you doing it because you think there's more money in it? Because I've seen both sides of the equation. I've seen some remodelers that have done very, very well, and they specifically have chosen not to get into the new construction world. Builders that think the same way, and then there's others that do a combination of both and do very well. But it's a business decision that has to be well thought out.
Is there a funding aspect to this that you would have them consider, like the ability to be able to carry yourself until you get that first deal, if you will, the first custom job? And then what are some of the landmines that they'd have to be aware of when they do? Because this would be new. I guess there's a certain aspect to when you're doing remodeling, but now everything's on you to take it right from beginning to end. So what are the, if you want to call it, the landmines that they have to try to avoid? And let's tie funding into that. Do they have to be conscious of their cash flow and everything else, even though they're getting the risk isn't on them as in a spec build, let's say, because they're going to get advances from their client, but they still have to be able to balance everything as they go forward. And you must have discovered this along your way.
We're big proponents of not funding projects, so to speak. That's just within our network. That's how we like to think is that, let's make sure we're structuring these deals and getting things set up so that first of all, how can we reduce the risk at all levels? That's the risk of something going sideways, the risk of something costing more, the risk of all the different risks that could be. And that's risk on behalf of the client, on behalf of you as the builder, remodeler, all the trades, all the people that are involved. So that is first and foremost. And that comes from very thorough planning. There's no doubt about it. You have to spend the time to do that planning to try to root out and eliminate risk like that. The other is that, that financial, you've really got to you got to know your numbers. And if you don't know your numbers, get somebody on your team that knows your numbers. It's so key. It's amazing to me how many builders that I've talked to that felt they were doing well, and then you sort of dive in a little bit and man, they were not far from maybe being out of business, you know? But how can you make sure again that you're putting these deals together so that you're not the one funding somebody's custom home. You've set up a draw schedule properly, documenting your work, you're completing your work that whether that's because there's times where you may be doing it directly with the client, you may be doing it through a lender. Having a vast understanding of how this works and making sure that you're in that position, it just when you get behind, things go sideways very quickly.
Have you got any horror stories that you can share that either you've experienced personally or maybe one of your coaching clients?
I've seen folks that have, I guess you could call it the old robbing Peter to pay Paul thing, but there's money in the bank. I would say that that's the common thing, and I've seen it over and over again. Well, there's money in the bank, and not having that clear picture of understanding the numbers that there's a business coach, Scott Beebe. I know Scott really, really well, and he talks about, really segmenting your accounts. And, his mindset, I love the way he puts it, is it's like, it's not your money. You have to understand that till you complete the work and finish the work. It is not your money. It is, in a sense, being held. It's in trust to get this project completed. I've seen builders where, again, the money, they see the money in the checking account, but by the time they get to the end of the project, they get to that position where the money's not there to pay everyone, and that was from some sort of mismanagement along the way. First of all, it might go all the way back to they don't even know their numbers enough to know what they should be charging. That's a very common theme. It still blows my mind after me being in this industry for close to 40 years now that there's almost an article every month in some publication trying to tell people the difference between markup and margin. Yeah, it's if you don't know your numbers, as I said, I also feel that there's people that don't know their numbers, and if they put a little time into it, they're just fine. But there's some people that they don't know their numbers, and in some cases, they really don't want to. It's just not their skill set. They're not comfortable with it. They're tuning out. It's so important to bring somebody on board that knows your numbers, that can help
Yeah.
you make decisions, you know?
I think
Um,
at that point, the mindset has to be different that this person I'm bringing on isn't costing me money. They're freeing me up so I can go out and make more money. And that person's going to save you a whole world of hurt because they can dial in the numbers. Or, maybe it's, project manager that you have to bring up because it takes you out of the equation. Because part of that thing about the numbers, and I'm sure you're well versed on this, that if you were to take a look at all your hours that you put in, really that you put in the course of a day, take the amount that you want to make that year, look at it divided by the hours. Suddenly, McDonald's is calling me because you're going to get a uniform and food at least, right? And I think that's the hardcore reality that wakes up a lot of builders that when they factor it in that way, how much am I actually getting paid by the hour? 20, $30. It's like, man, what the hell am I doing? You know?
it's interesting you say that the hours too, because I've had the opportunity to see the history and the financials of a lot of builders and remodelers, and the one common theme that I have seen over and over and over again is that people simply are not charging for all the hours they're working. It's really that simple. That's the biggest area that I've found across the board where people can, if they put some attention, they could immediately add to their bottom line. I think people get pretty good with whatever they may be using for estimating systems, to understand how many. And of course, we've got all sorts of takeoff software nowadays. You can figure out how many sheets of plywood you need and drywall. And if you get things quoted from a trade, that's fine. But I'm talking go all the way back to actually dive into from you, the business owner, to anyone else that might be in your office related to a project, your project manager's car. How much time are they actually spending helping that client build their home? You should be getting paid for it, but the vast majority I find simply are not. Maybe they're not charging by the hour. Maybe they're just using a percentage or a fee or something like that. But I think there's so much money left off the table simply from that, from business owners not understanding how much time they actually spend building or remodeling a home.
They probably don't realize it because it's something, rather than get Dwayne to do it, I'll just run over there right now. It'll take me 10 minutes or something. And 10 minutes becomes 2 hours. And then something else comes up. And in essence, you've gone from being a builder to a fireman and you're putting out all these different fires. And it's like nothing's really getting done. And I guess this goes back to one of the benefits of buying into a franchise with the systems that will help keep you on track. Part of what you're doing with your coaching then, are you helping your client stay on track? Like actually have a schedule? Here's what I need to do. Are you, in essence, qualifying their time invested in the task to get it done?
Yeah, it's the old, the adage of accountability. I mean, I think it's, and you have to have that at all levels, whether you're coaching, whether that's you as a leader in your business owner. What's the accountability look like? You can do all the strategic planning and annual planning and all that stuff that's, maybe get you excited. But if it just goes on a shelf, so you drag that out and do it again next year or 5 years from now, there's no value. But if you've got something that is holding each and every person on the team accountable to something, measurables, metrics, whatever you have decided upon, to me, that's the most important thing, is to see moving the needles, a very popular phrase, but what does that mean to each and every individual, And I think that needs to be done to the team member level, also at the business level, actually being able to, what's the saying? What gets measured gets done. If you don't have a very strong level of accountability in your organization, it's going to be really difficult to track any kind of forward progress.
What about having a vision? How important is that? Where you actually want to take your company?
I think it's huge, and I'm also a big proponent of Colby scores. It helped me that too. Originally, when the first time I took my Colby score, I was in a Vistage group. I probably had my Colby score done 6 or 8 times through the years. And the amazing thing is the numbers basically the same each time. What I like about it is it kind of intrinsically will say that the areas you gravitate to. Who are you? How do you process information? But you've got folks, and there's other personality profiles, things like that out there. But there's a very distinct difference between the visionary people in the world and then your integrator people that actually kind of down in the trenches get stuff done. Both extremely valuable at a business, you know. And I think a lot of business owners don't. I think they underestimate how important it is that everyone else on their team really needs to know where you're going as a company, as a team. What are we doing? Why are we doing this? And it doesn't always mean they have to be 100% in agreement, but they do have to at least respect it, be aligned, and know that the things that they're doing every day are in alignment with where the company's going. So I think it's huge to go through. And if you've never done it before, take the time to go through a full blown vision exercise. I've also, the thing that I will find is I have found it's one of the most difficult things that I can get out of a builder. There's a few of them that are visionary and they'll tell you right away, but I would say over 50%, maybe 60 to 70% of the builders that I talk to, if I straight up challenge them on that, they really struggle. They kind of think of it as a prediction. Like if I ask them where they want to be in 10 years, what their business looks like in 10 years, they can't. They're trying to connect the dots. They're trying to say, well, I'm doing 4 million this year. I want to do 6 million next year. I might be working in this neighbor there. And I'm trying to say, no, like just blow this up a little bit. Like, what do you, 10 years from now, where do you want to be? You want to have 15 offices? Do you want to dominate the Southeast? Do you want to be retired sitting on what? Give me the big picture. It's amazing how many people struggle with that.
It's got to be a big hug, a big, hairy, audacious goal. And this would be a good opportunity to say something about Sound Capital to keep the lights on for this podcast. But their big, hairy, audacious goal is funding 1 million doors. And that's a big goal. And they're partnering up with different lenders and different builders to make that happen because we have such a shortage. It's interesting that you said the Colby Index. I met Kathy Colby years ago in a mastermind group that I belong to in Tempe, Arizona. We came out there quarterly. And I thought the really interesting thing, and correct me if I'm wrong here, the nuance of the Colby Index, it wasn't what you're bad at. It's focusing on what you're really good at so you can focus on it more to get better
Oh,
at it.
absolutely. Yeah.
And you're right. If they haven't done it, the Colby Index would definitely be worth the investment.
Very much worth it. Yeah. It's got there's four numbers, like four columns that
Yeah.
you take it. And I had Kathy Colby had spoke with her several years ago as well. And we also had a facilitator on one of the podcast episodes we did. And she equated it to look at each one almost like a battery. Something that you engage, a task that you may engage in either fills your battery or drains your battery, and if you're spending time, that's back to the exercise I talked about earlier about all those things you may do in a given week. If you are doing a lot of things that are draining your battery, that's a big red flag.
Well, part of this draining the battery, when I look at what you do in the course of your day, what are you doing to recharge? Because I think it's really important for builders to realize that they can't get up at 6 in the morning, work till 10 at night, wash, rinse, repeat, because they're going to burn out. So do you schedule time in your day or your week that this is mine? Nobody can touch it. It's my family time. It's my hiking time. Do you schedule time for yourself to be able to go to the gym? And once you schedule something, are you diligent that this time cannot be taken?
I think the most important thing that I learned, again, I don't know that this came from a Vistage, but it definitely came out of a workshop. But it was an intense workshop, and it was all around time management. And the big key focus was time blocking. And the presenter was very good. He was hardcore about, I don't care if you block it, protect it. Don't let go of it for any reason. And it stuck with me because to this day, I block my calendar. I block my calendar with meetings like this podcast. That's blocked. It's on my calendar. I had a little bit of time blocked before that to prep for this podcast. Tomorrow I have meetings that are blocked on my calendar, but I also have free space blocked on my calendar that I'm going to do everything within my power to not give up. I don't, to me, as me personally, I don't think it's as important as the things that you're doing. Yes, we want to be healthy. You need exercise. You got to get out. But it's different for everybody for what recharges their batteries. But I mean, I think it's giving yourself the time to process everything that goes on in a given day. Is just talking about that with someone earlier. And then, as we all know, the world's getting busier and busier all the time, but you have to be able to decompress, have your time to get your work done, have your time to go do whatever it is you do, your walk in the woods or yoga, whatever it is for you. And then the other thing that I've done on to connect with time blocking is I kind of start and end my day the same way every way. Actually, the more important thing is probably how I end each day. Like I try to end every day with, it might sound ridiculous, but I'm actually sort of an inbox zero kind of freak. Like I don't like my inbox, my email inbox to just be filled to the brim with hundreds and thousands of unread messages. I like to do something with them. Doesn't mean that I'm necessarily going to get everything done, but it's tidy up, I guess is what I would call it. By the end of every day, I had to respond to that email. These emails, you know what? I can move them over here. That takes a few days. Got a few things on my to-do list that I needed to get done. I'll do those first thing tomorrow morning. Whatever it is, I get myself to the point at the end of the day that I'm good with it. That's the thing that keeps me from taking it home with me. And I think that's, as a builder, that's really difficult to do. You're scrambling around, there's all sorts of things going on. And if you can carve out a way to just stop, maybe jot down the things, all those things that you were either writing down during the day, or maybe make that one more call, whatever it is you have to do, but process stuff so that you can get a good night's sleep, you can disconnect, you come back, you sort of got a nice organized day the next morning. And it's that combination, I think, of whatever your task list is, tons of program software, all that stuff, but have one, use it, and then time block. Don't be one of these people that commits to it, but then gives everything up, and takes this meeting and takes that meeting and moves this around. You got to say no. No, can't do that.
Are you using this with some of your clients? Let's say using this, what they were before, they've implemented time blocking. What's the effect that it's had on them?
Better lives, no doubt about it. You see people that have gone through, maybe started getting to that burnout phase or definitely high stress phase to where it comes way, way down. We see it even at the project manager level. I mean, one of the things within Alair that we talk a lot about is setting expectations properly with everybody, your team members, with your homeowner clients, but from the get-go with a client, one of the first things you probably should do, especially as a project manager, not even a business owner, but maybe set some ground rules around how this is going to work, you know? Now we all know, you've got to be there, you've got to be available if there's an emergency, but if you don't set the expectations for what are normal, call hours, when should we communicate? I don't really want to take a text message at 9 at night. What constitutes an emergency? It's really important to get that stuff, because if not, we see people's stress levels go just through the roof.
This takes us right back to where we started, that you have to treat your business like a business. And you're not a fireman, you're in the building business, right? So you have to build a calendar, you have to block it out. You're pouring a foundation just like you would a home, right? And everything's going to be built on that. So your calendar is basically the foundation for your day, your week, your month, your life.
Absolutely.
Dwayne, we've covered a lot of territory here. The wheels are starting to come down as we approach. Anything that we missed that you want to touch on?
I don't think so. I mean, we definitely went all over the place, but I think it's all valid. I think when I think about the things that most business owners, builders, remodelers, in the course of any given day, I think one of the things, and maybe this is back to the time blocking thing and the vision that you talked about, is being able to, you've got to have some consistent time to get out of today and really think about it. Yeah, it's the age old saying, the cliche, work on the business, not in the business, but it's so incredibly important, to really think about where do I want to take my business? Also setting yourself up as a leader for everybody else on your team, that ability to build a great team and then be able to start to step back and see what the team can actually do with your business. It's pretty awesome, when you get it set up right. I think challenging the status quo, kind of the way things have always been done. I think that's important to do. You got to be looking at new opportunities. Yeah, I think that time for growth, I think everybody out there needs to be thinking about it. What are the opportunities for me in my business, in my market? Is there a better way to do things? You got to stay hungry with that.
Staying hungry. Do you still have your podcast? I think I read somewhere that you were hosting a podcast. Is that still?
Yeah, I do not. We did the Builder Nuggets podcast for about 3, maybe 4 seasons. We still have some snippets and things that go out kind of on a regular basis, but we actually haven't decided what we want to do with it. A fellow named Dave Young and myself started that. It was a COVID experiment. It was a blast going through it. We met so many different builders and remodelers and other folks in the industry and other coaches. And I'm sure, as all you have to do is give people an opportunity to talk, right?
Yeah, I've got one. So this just prompted a question for me. And I think it's a perfect segue to land the plane. You've done enough podcasting. You've been interviewed, a bunch of times, probably more so than me. Has there been a question that you're sitting at the mic and you're waiting for the host to ask you that question, but it hasn't been asked yet.
Wow, I have not been asked that question for sure. I'm not sure what that would be, like what, because I've got, the where do you see yourself, or,
It's all
that's
cliche
really a
stuff.
good, where do you see the industry, a lot of those types.
Give me something good. Pretend you're on this side of the mic, man. You're on this side of the mic and you're asking yourself, what's that question I've never been asked?
What's
That
that
you
question
want
I've never.
somebody to have asked you. That's the quantifier. It's a question that deep down you wish somebody had asked you. And it could be anything. It doesn't have to be building. It could be, what do you
Yeah.
put on your toast? Like anything. And you can't use that. I just gave that away.
Maybe it would be back to what I had said earlier. Maybe it would be if somebody, and nobody's ever asked me that, but would it be that do you regret not going to college?
I'll
I've
ask it.
never
You
been
regret
asked
not
that.
going.
Yeah, I've never been asked that, and I think if I did, I would very pleased to answer that question and say absolutely not, no regrets at all. I mean, yeah, if there was any regret at all, it would be, maybe that experience around saying, "Hey, I went to college," but and I've got a tremendous appreciation for, for college and higher learning. Both my kids are there. But I think we have to get to a place where skilled labor in this country, it's an absolute necessity. It's, as I said before, most of these crafts are noble positions. We have to get to the point where it's appreciated, and it's something that people want to do. It's not a demotion. It's not a leftover. It's so important to me, and I think our industry, that we have to get that message out. There's so many opportunities. I think that's the thing too. It's not just, "Oh, we need people to work jobs." It's unbelievable opportunities for people at every level. That would be my question.
That's a good answer. It just harped me to think of a plumber that a friend of mine deals with in California. He needed him to come out to the job site and came out with his van, golf shirt with the logo on it. Didn't realize the guy's got his own private jet. He's a multimillionaire, and he did that through his plumbing industry. He started off, did his apprenticeship, and now he's got his own friggin' plane, right? So it's these success stories in the trades that we got to get them out there. And I think that will help instill this desire for the next generation to see, yeah, there is potential in working in the trades. So
I'm gonna ask, can I ask you one question? This
yeah,
is how
absolutely.
this is how we used to end our podcast. So when you think about the next 6 months to a year, what are you excited about? Personally and professionally?
Yeah, professionally, I'd say this podcast, Builder Straight Talk, was something that was handed to me back in December. And I treated it like a storefront, if you will. And before we really started promoting it, I said, before you invite people to your grand opening, you got to make sure you got stuff on the shelves. And I just picked a number. Arbitrarily, I said, once we have 25 interviews, that'll be official. We're ready to launch this puppy. And we're at that point now. So when you ask me 6 months from now, I see Builder Straight Talk is going to take off because we've aligned ourselves with so many associations. So rather than try to go after individual subscribers, and it's free, by the way, we've aligned ourselves with designations that represents thousands of builders, and they love what we're doing here. So I see that gets me really excited, and the connections that I'm making, and the fact that I had to get up to snuff really quickly to be able to interview builders. I was doing this back in '08, '07 with all the CEOs in real estate. So the Dave Linigers of the world, founder of Remax, I was interviewing them, all the coaches and trainers. I was that interview guy. And here we are, almost 20 years later, and I'm picking up the mantle again to do this. And it's really exciting to be able to meet people like you. And then what'll happen is 2 interviews from now, I'll meet somebody and they'll say, "Oh, I was thinking about, getting into a franchise." Wait a minute. I've got somebody you need to talk to. And now I'm finding myself not only building the podcast, but being this connector. And the other thing that gets me really excited is this relationship that I've got with Sound Capital, that is our parent company, and watching what they do to help builders make that transition from maybe they're doing renos, but they want to get into the spec build. So they don't want to do the custom. They want to get into spec and now actually be able to ramp that up and scale it. And those are two different animals altogether. And yeah, so in answer to your question, those are the things on a business and personal level. Yeah, they're really getting me out of bed and get me fired up.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
And the fact that one day our paths will cross and we'll be able to do this in person. So I kind of look forward to that too. Actually,
Absolutely.
that will be in 6 months. I'll see your smiling face at the International Build Show.
You will be in Orlando. Very good.
Yeah. Duane, my friend, thanks for taking the time out to do this. I really appreciate it. And as they say, to be continued.
Yes, Michael, thanks for having me on, and look forward to talking again.
Thanks for listening to Builder Straight Talk. Make sure to like, comment, and share this episode on your favorite social media platform. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, available wherever you get your podcast streaming fix. Until next time, keep building smarter. This episode is made possible by our parent company, Sound Capital, funding built for builders.